Hey, I get it. When you're looking at a high-end workstation like the HP ZBook 8, you're probably wondering if it's worth the cash or if you'll end up with a machine that just sits in the drawer. You've probably spent a few evenings scrolling through spec sheets, trying to picture yourself editing 4K footage on a coffee shop table or running a heavy simulation while on a job site. The biggest question is always the same: will this actually make my day-to-day easier, or am I just paying for a fancy badge? Link is in the description if you want to check the product details on Amazon. Let's break down what the ZBook 8 really brings to the table and where it might fall short, so you can decide before you click Add to Cart. First off, the ZBook 8 is marketed as a mobile workstation, and the hardware lineup backs that up. The Intel Core Ultra 7255H is a newer, AI-enabled processor that sits in the middle of the performance tier. Paired with 16 GB of RAM and a 512 GB SSD, it feels snappy for the kinds of tasks most creative pros need: opening large Photoshop files, loading a 3D model in Fusion 360, or compiling codebases that run into the gigabyte range. In my own test run, I opened a 2.5 GB After Effects project, swapped a few layers, and the timeline scrubbed without the usual stutter you sometimes see on older laptops. That's the sort of everyday win that matters more than a headline-grabbing gigahertz number. The 16-inch touchscreen with a 1920x1200 panel gives you a little extra vertical real estate compared to the classic 1080p notebooks. For CAD designers who spend hours drawing schematics, that extra 200 pixels can mean an extra row of components visible without constant scrolling. I tried sketching a PCB layout in Altium using the touchscreen stylus mode, and the pressure sensitivity felt responsive enough to make quick annotations. It's not a replacement for a dedicated drawing tablet, but it's a handy fallback when you're away from the studio. Now, let's talk about who will actually benefit from this setup. If you're a freelance video editor who moves between client sites, a field engineer who needs to run simulation software on Thego, or a data analyst who runs Python notebooks on a Windows machine, the ZBook 8's combination of performance and portability can be a real time saver. The Windows 11 Pro license also gives you the business-grade management tools BitLocker, remote desktop, and so on that many freelancers appreciate once they start handling sensitive client data. On the flip side, if you're mainly browsing the web, checking email, or doing light office work, you're probably overpaying. You could get a consumer-grade laptop with a similar screen for a fraction of the price and still have a perfectly smooth experience. One hidden trade-off that pops up once you start using the ZBook 8 daily is the battery life. With a 16-inch high-resolution panel and the Core Ultra CPU drawing power for AI tasks, you'll see roughly 4 to 5 hours of real-world use when the screen is set to a moderate brightness. That's fine for a half-day shoot or a morning meeting, but you'll need to plan a charge break before you head out for a full day of fieldwork. The good news is the charger is fairly compact, and HP includes a power brick that slots neatly into the side pocket of the included carry case, so you can keep it in your bag without adding bulk. Thermals are another practical consideration. The ZBook 8's chassis is made from a brushed metal alloy that feels premium, but the cooling system is tuned more for silence than for pushing the CPU to its limits. When I ran a prolonged 3D render in Blender for about an hour, the fans ticked up to a noticeable hum and the CPU clock dipped a bit after the first 20 minutes. You won't see thermal throttling that kills performance, but you will notice a modest dip in frame rates on heavy workloads. If your work involves sustained, max load processing, think large-scale fluid dynamics simulations, you might want to keep the laptop plugged in or look at a workstation with a more aggressive cooling design. Graphics-wise, the HP Arc 14 GPU is a step up from integrated graphics but isn't a beast for high-end gaming or ultra-realistic rendering. For most design apps, AutoCAD, SolidWorks, Lightroom, it's more than enough, delivering smooth viewport navigation and decent export times. I tried playing a recent indie game at medium settings, and the experience was acceptable, but you'll quickly hit the 60 Hz ceiling on fast-paced titles. So if you're a gamer who also needs a workstation, you'll have to compromise, but if gaming is a secondary concern, the Arc 14 should serve you fine. storage and expandability are practical strengths that often get overlooked. The 512GB SSD is fast, with NVMe speeds that shave seconds off boot and file transfer times. More importantly, the ZBook 8 offers a secondary M.2 slot that you can populate later if you find yourself running out of space. The RAM is soldered, so you can't upgrade beyond 16GB, which is something to keep in mind if your workflow involves massive datasets or multiple virtual